Hey everyone, this is Roland here. Welcome and thank you for being here. And yes, I know it's been a while. A lot has been happening. There was a conference, and it was a week long, well, almost a week long. But before that, there was so many things in preparation for that, and I just was so crazy busy, man. And then there was exams that I had to take, and man, it's been crazy, and I had to rest from all that. But anyway, I am glad to be back. And today I want to talk about the promise because God has a promise for you. He has a promise for me, and and He will fulfill that promise. But there is a process that we need to acknowledge, that we need to know, and with that, I want to talk about Paul because God promised Paul a lot of things. But I want to zone in on one specific promise, and let's go to Acts 23. Verse 11, and it says, "The following night the Lord stood by him and said, 'Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome.'" So here we see God telling Paul that don't be discouraged, keep on doing what you're doing. You will go to Rome and testify in Rome about me. So that was the promise. But now we see that was in the evening. Okay, but look at that. The next day. And in verse 12 it says, "When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, 'We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul.'" And then they go on and explain this plot to kill him. But we see here that God in the evening had spoken to Paul and said, "You are going to testify in Rome." That was the promise to Paul from God. But then it says the next day there was an attack. The next day the Jews were upset and they were trying to kill him, and 40 joined in this conspiracy. And there's a pattern here that I want you to see, that yes, God has a promise for us, but there is also this time of testing out Call It. It's not just attack, and I think we could blame it and say it's just the enemy trying to just stop us, and yes, that is true. But at the same time, I think also in that time, God also uses this as a time of testing to see, will you trust me when things are going wrong? Will you trust me when nothing seems to be happening? Will you trust me when hope is gone? Like, will you hold on to my faithfulness? And I think that's the test in the midst of the attack, because we need to keep on holding on to God's promise. We need to keep trusting that God is faithful and that is true, and that what He said and what He's promised us will come to pass. And we see that with Joseph as well, is where he had this dream and he told his brothers, and that's why they were so angry at him. And he told his mom and his dad that "I see you all bowing down to me." And God has spoken to him through a dream, right? But what happens? He did not become a king immediately. Instead, he gets shipped off to Egypt. Actually, he nearly gets killed, but then he gets shipped off to Egypt. So again, there was that time, and yes, we could say the enemy did it, and yes, he did, right? The enemy is always trying to stop God's plans for our lives. He doesn't want us to see God's promises fulfilled in our lives, and that's the truth. But to add to that is that it's also a time of testing, that God wants to test our hearts as well and see where we are at. Do we trust Him? Do we believe in Him? Are we going to hold on to His word when, for example, like Joseph, when he was going to Egypt, and he must have been wondering, but God, you showed me this, so what's happening? Now there's no way, there's no indicator of, is God going to come through? Has He abandoned me? And all these things. But that's my encouragement to you, is that in the midst of the storm, trust in God, hold on to God, believe in God. He will fulfill His promises. And as we see with Paul did end up going to Rome to testify, and Joseph became king. God fulfilled what God had showed him, and that's the thing with us, that there's the promise that God has promised us. Then there's the storm, there's the time of testing, there's the time of attack, and then there's the fulfillment. God will fulfill what He has promised you, and we just need to keep on believing. You need to keep on trusting, no matter how hard it is. Know that God is for you, that He is faithful and true. So with that, I've come to the end of this episode. I will see you next week, and God bless.